Lately, I've found myself envisioning what life might be like when some return to normalcy, whatever that means, becomes possible. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it's shining brightly, sometimes it's just barely flickering. But it's there, nonetheless. Imagine yourself for a moment, walking into someone else's home for a large dinner party again, but for the first time. Or casually hanging out with your friends in the hallways of school again, but for the first time. Or coming into the synagogue for services and sitting next to people not in your immediate household again, but for the first time. Or spontaneously embracing someone to express overwhelming joy or to offer comfort again, but for the first time. Even just thinking about the possibility of doing any of these things that used to be so normal again, but for the first time in such a long time, brings me happiness, hope, motivation. Of course, none of us knows when these will all happen, but I have the sense that it is safe to begin to imagine their possibility. And if that's the case, then beyond just dreaming of what the experience of that returning to our pre-COVID freedoms will be like, I'd like to invite us to consider just what that freedom will mean for us. Will we simply go back to how things always were before? Or will we use the perspective that this period of chaos and constraint has given to us to make different choices? Think about it. We are presented with the unique chance for a system-wide do-over, as it were. We get to do things again, but we get the choice to do them differently, as individuals, but also as a collective society and world. Futurist and innovation professor Robert Wolcott recently noted this novel opportunity in a piece he wrote in Forbes titled "The Great Unwinding." Few notice, he said, that in 2021, we'll experience the last, first reopening after a pandemic of our lifetimes. Sure, we might suffer future contagions, but this year's will be the only first reopening we will endure. Like tight coiled springs, our reopening lives will unleash colossal potential energy. But the question then becomes, how and where will we channel that energy? Will we strive to go back to everything that was before as fast as we can? Or will we look to create something better? Consider this powerful story from the Talmud, written as testimony from our ancestors' own experience of a great unwinding, as it were, after the destruction of the temple. Both the greatest single destruction in all of Jewish history, but at the very same time, the catalyst for the paradigm of transformation that resulted in the Jewish life we still have today that's governed as operative for the past 2,000 years. In the story, a rabbi, Rabban Gamliel, describes standing on the deck of a ship and watching a nearby ship crash and break apart, casting overboard the one and only Rabbi Akiva. But when Gamliel's ship arrives at the port and he disembarks, Gamliel is shocked to see Rabbi Akiva, who sits down next to him and begins a typical rabbinic conversation of how to live Jewishly. Gamliel asks Akiva how he survived after being thrown into the watery deep. To which Rabbi Akiva replies, "I held on to a plank from the ship, and I bent my head toward each and every wave that came toward me until I reached the shore." It's a metaphor, of course. Rabbi Akiva's boat represents the temple, the world that was before, now gone, destroyed, thus the shipwreck. The waves in the water are the new currents of life, the new forces at play in the world. It's interesting to see that in order to survive, Rabbi Akiva doesn't swim back to the destroyed ship and hold on for dear life to the wreckage until someone comes to rescue him. Instead, he survives by holding on to just a piece from it. It's just enough of what was to keep him afloat. And note too that Akiva doesn't fight against the waves in the water, but instead he bows his head towards them. And it's the currents of those very waves that bring him on his plank to shore. It's the combination of the retention of just a part of what was before, applied to the current of a new day, that enables Akiva not only to survive, but also to continue to fulfill his mission. I think Akiva's choices offer us a profound framework for determining what our commitments and approaches should be once we are able to step onto the shores of the post-COVID world. But we don't have to wait to begin to make those considerations and those choices. We can start now, just like Akiva, while we're still floating in the sea. And these choices come in the form of 4 key questions. First, what ship will we choose to leave behind? Second, what plank will we hold on to? Third, what waves will we bend into for the sake of reaching the shore? And fourth, once we are there, what higher or larger purpose are we going to commit or recommit ourselves to serve? The truth is, for those of us here today, we are all like Akiva. We have so far survived. And I use that term intentionally. It may feel dramatic for you. It shouldn't. I've personally buried too many people who have died from COVID-19 to call it anything less. And as such, each of us has the opportunity, I might even say obligation, to use the gift of living through this time as a catalyst for personal recalibration. Make no mistake, the power of default, of what has always been, of what was, it's incredibly strong. It has a gravitational force of its own. If we do not apply a different oppositional force, we will simply return to what was, to business as usual, and quickly come to taking for granted everything and everyone around us again. How soon will we forget that the essential workers all around us literally make our survival possible, and instead fall back into the sleepy entitlement that allows us to see them as cogs in a wheel? How soon will our amnesia about the blessing of human touch or gatherings set in, that will give in to the power of so-called convenience that otherwise governs our lives? How soon will we lose sight of the blessing of discernment between what really matters and what does not, and give ourselves over to the habits of consumption and excess that we mistakenly believe will fill us up, but in truth never satisfy? So for this Shabbat, and every day and every week between now and our arrival to the post-COVID world shores, let's ask ourselves those questions. What ship will we leave behind? What plank will we hold on to? What waves will we bend into for the sake of reaching the shore? And once we're there, what higher or larger purpose are we going to commit or recommit ourselves to serve? Sooner or later, each of us will get the chance to do everything we used to do again, but for the first time. Let's do the work to make sure that we don't waste the opportunity that comes with what we pray will be a once-in-a-lifetime gift. Shabbat Shalom.